So I never thought I'd be the type of guy to sit down and write something like this on Reddit. But here I am. Life has a funny way of flipping you upside down, and mine did exactly that when I moved to Dubai. Now, let me make this clear. I didn't go there chasing palm-shaped islands or fancy cars. I went because I needed work. I was in my late 20s, kind of drifting, and when an old college buddy called me up saying there was a golden opportunity in Dubai, well, I jumped on it. He made it sound like the complete history of Dubai was about to include me in its next chapter. When I first arrived, the city felt unreal. The skyscrapers looked like something out of a video game. Everywhere smelled like expensive cologne, and the malls were so massive they made my hometown's downtown look like a garage sale. I was overwhelmed, but in a good way. I thought, this is it. This is where I rebuild myself. But what I didn't know back then was that this place, this glittering city in the desert, was about to teach me some of the hardest lessons of my life. Not just about money, or work, or success. About trust, about betrayal, and about how quickly everything you believe in can crack wide open. At first, though, it was all excitement. A new job, a new country, a sense of possibility. I didn't realize that behind all the glass towers and fancy hotels, there were shadows waiting for me. The first couple of weeks in Dubai felt like a dream. My buddy, let's call him Sam, set me up with a small apartment near Business Bay. It wasn't flashy, but it had AC that worked, a must in that desert heat, and a view of some skyscraper I couldn't pronounce. The job itself? Well, that's where things started to feel off. I'd been told I'd be working in consulting, but when I showed up, it was basically a glorified sales role. We were pitching some investment packages that didn't make a whole lot of sense. The company threw around words like guaranteed growth and exclusive opportunities, but whenever I asked for details, the managers would just smile and tell me not to worry. At first, I ignored the red flags. I needed the job. I needed the paycheck. So I kept my head down and did what I was told. But then little things started piling up. For example, Sam, the same guy who convinced me to come, started acting differently. He'd duck out of meetings without explanation. He had this habit of locking his phone screen whenever I walked past. And when I asked him to grab dinner after work, he always had some excuse. Still, I brushed it off. Maybe he was just stressed. Maybe Dubai had changed him. People change when money gets involved, right? But deep down, I could feel something wasn't right. The company was too shiny on the outside, too vague on the inside. And Sam, my supposed lifeline in this new city, was slowly turning into a stranger. What I didn't know yet was how much that distance, his secrecy, was about to cost me. About a month into the job, I got my first real what the hell moment. I was sitting at my desk, slogging through cold calls, when a client called me back. She was furious. Like, screaming into the phone furious. She kept saying I'd promised her some insane return on her investment, and that the money she'd put in hadn't moved an inch. Thing is, I had never spoken to her before. I checked my notes, my call logs, everything. Nothing. I went to my manager about it, and instead of clearing things up, he gave me this creepy smile and said, "Sometimes wires get crossed. Just smooth it over." Smooth it over? The woman was practically threatening legal action, and he wanted me to just charm my way out of it. Later that night, I decided to grab a beer with Sam. I hadn't seen much of him outside of work, and I figured maybe he could explain what was going on. We met at this rooftop bar, the kind that makes you feel like a millionaire even though your wallet's empty. At first, it felt like old times. We laughed, swapped stories, but then I noticed he was distracted. His phone kept buzzing, and every time he looked at it, his face went tight. Finally, I asked him straight up, "Sam, man, what's going on? You got me out here on the promise of something solid, but this job feels shady as hell." He hesitated, and for a split second, I saw guilt flash across his face. Then he leaned back, smirked, and said, "Relax. You'll understand soon. This is just how Dubai works. Big risk, big reward." That answer didn't sit right with me. But before I could press him, his phone buzzed again, and he excused himself, saying he had to meet a client. He left me there, alone on that rooftop, staring at the glittering skyline, feeling more like an outsider than ever. And that's when the first seed of doubt really planted itself in my head. A few days after that rooftop conversation, I was working late at the office. Most people had cleared out, but I stayed behind to finish some reports, partly because I didn't want to look like I wasn't pulling my weight, partly because I couldn't sleep much anyway. Around 10 p.m., I noticed Sam's name pop up on the sign-in log. That was weird. He almost never worked late. Curiosity got the better of me, so I went to grab a coffee and kept an eye out. Sure enough, I saw him slip into one of the glass-walled conference rooms. But he wasn't alone. There were two other guys in there, both in suits that screamed money. They had briefcases on the table, and from where I stood, I could see documents spread out. I couldn't make out the details, but one thing was clear. These weren't ordinary business meetings. I lingered in the hallway, pretending to scroll my phone. At one point, Sam raised his voice, loud enough for me to catch a few words. He doesn't suspect. Move the funds. Keep it quiet. My stomach dropped. He doesn't suspect. Who was he? Me? One of the clients? When the meeting wrapped up, I barely had time to duck into the stairwell before Sam and the two suits walked past. They were laughing, but it wasn't the kind of laugh you share with friends. It was sharp, almost mean. I went home that night with my head spinning. The job already felt shady, but now I was starting to realize it wasn't just bad business. It was something darker. And the worst part? Sam, the guy I trusted enough to follow halfway across the world, was in the middle of it. That was the first night I thought seriously about quitting. But quitting in Dubai isn't like quitting back home. Your visa, your housing, your paycheck, it's all tied to the job. Walk away, and you're basically stranded. So I told myself I'd stick it out a little longer. Just long enough to figure out what the hell was going on. Big mistake. 2 weeks later, the storm finally hit me. I got called into the manager's office. This guy always had his blinds drawn, which made the whole room feel like a pressure cooker. He told me, real calm, that one of my clients had filed a complaint, not just about money, but accusing me personally of misrepresenting the investment. I froze. I hadn't even been the one handling that client. I tried explaining, showing him my notes, my call records, but he just sat there with this fake sympathetic look. Then he dropped the hammer. If this escalates, it'll be your name on the paperwork, not the company's. That's when it clicked. They were setting me up as the fall guy, the too trusting newbie, the foreigner with no real roots in Dubai. I left the office shaking. My first thought was Sam. He'd know what to do, right? But when I found him later and told him, he barely reacted. Just shrugged and said, "Don't worry, man. They always do this at first. It'll blow over." But I could see it in his eyes. He knew. Hell, he might have even been the one pulling the strings. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, feeling my whole world collapse. The excitement I felt when I first landed in Dubai, gone. The dream of building a life here, crumbling. And the worst part was realizing the betrayal wasn't just from the company. It was from Sam, my friend. The guy who'd promised me the chance of a lifetime was feeding me to the wolves. I knew then that I had to make a decision. Fight back or get out. I've always been the type who hates feeling powerless. So instead of curling up and accepting my fate, I decided to fight back. Dumb, maybe, but at the time it felt like my only option. The next day, I started gathering everything. Emails, call logs, notes. Anything that could prove I wasn't the one making promises I couldn't keep. I even managed to print out a few documents from the office server when nobody was looking. Some of them had Sam's initials all over them. Armed with my little evidence folder, I asked for another meeting with management. I walked in thinking maybe, they'd realize they couldn't just pin this on me. But man, was I naive. The manager didn't even look at my papers. He just leaned back, smirked, and said, "You think you understand how things work here?" Then he slid my folder across the desk, back to me, like it was nothing. I tried to push, raising my voice, insisting that it wasn't my fault. That's when he snapped. His tone went ice cold. "Careful. You're a guest in this country. Don't make trouble for yourself." That line hit me like a punch to the gut. I suddenly realized the balance of power. My visa, my paycheck, my right to even stay in Dubai, all of it hung on their word. If they wanted to bury me, they could. I walked out of that office feeling crushed. I thought I'd stood up for myself, but instead I'd just painted a target on my back. And Sam, he didn't even ask how the meeting went. In fact, he avoided me completely for the next few days. That silence hurt more than anything. It was the moment I knew I wasn't just in over my head. I was drowning. It happened on a Thursday night. The city was buzzing because weekends in Dubai start Friday, and everyone was already slipping into party mode. I was walking home after a long, soul-sucking day, and I cut through a side street near the office. That's when I saw him. Sam. He was standing outside this luxury car I'd never seen him with before. Definitely not the beat-up sedan he'd been driving when I first arrived. Next to him was one of those suits I'd spotted during that late-night meeting. They had a briefcase between them. I slowed down, ducking into the shadow of a shop front, pretending to check my phone. I could see them clearly. The briefcase opened, and inside was stacks of cash. Not dirhams. Dollars. Piles of them. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they'd hear it. I watched as Sam counted the bills like he'd done this 100 times before. He laughed, shook the guy's hand, and slid into the car like he belonged in it. In that moment, every doubt I'd had was confirmed. He wasn't just involved in shady deals, he was profiting off them. And the setup with me? It all made sense now. I was the decoy, the disposable face. I stood frozen, part of me wanting to storm up and confront him, another part screaming at me to stay invisible. In the end, survival instincts won. I walked away, head down, trying not to think about how my friend had turned into the architect of my downfall. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I just kept replaying the image of that briefcase in my head. Betrayal doesn't always come like a knife in the back. It can come as a slow realization, like watching someone you trusted peel their mask off right in front of you. And here's the kicker. The very next day, HR sent me a warning letter about client misconduct. Clear as day. The trap was closing. After that warning letter, I knew I couldn't just sit and wait to get crushed. I had to do something, anything, to protect myself. So I did what felt like the only option left. I went to the U.S. consulate. I remember sitting in the waiting area, palms sweating, rehearsing how I was going to explain it all without sounding paranoid. When I finally got to speak with an officer, I laid everything out. The shady investments, the angry clients, the threat of being scapegoated. Hell, I even mentioned Sam and the cash-stuffed briefcase. The officer listened, nodded politely, and then gave me this look that chilled me. It was a mix of sympathy and warning. You need to be careful. We can't interfere with local legal matters. If your employer makes a case, it will be handled under UAE law. Translation? You're on your own, buddy. Walking out of that building, I felt smaller than I ever had in my life. I had no leverage, no allies, and now Sam's shadow loomed larger than ever. But then I made a mistake, a big one. Instead of keeping quiet, I confronted Sam directly that night. I showed up at his apartment, told him I'd seen him with the briefcase, told him I wasn't going to take the fall for him. He just stared at me for a long moment, then broke into this slow, mocking grin. You really don't get it, do you? You're already in too deep. Walk away if you want, but don't think you'll get far. That line terrified me more than anything. It wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. I left his place shaking, realizing I'd just put a giant target on my back. 2 days after I confronted Sam, everything went to hell. I was sitting at my desk, trying to look busy, when 2 men in kanduras, traditional Emirati dress, walked into the office with security. They asked for me by name. Everyone went silent, watching as I was escorted out like some criminal. My heart was pounding. I thought, this is it. They're arresting me. Turns out, they weren't police. They were investigators tied to the financial regulator. Someone had filed a complaint about fraudulent investment practices, and guess whose name was all over the paperwork? Mine. They took me to a sterile little room and started questioning me. At first, I tried explaining, told them I was just a low-level employee, that I had no control over the deals. But every time I spoke, one of them would glance at the file in front of him, shake his head, and say, "But you signed this, didn't you?" And there it was. My signature. On contracts I swear I never touched. I felt sick. They'd forged my name, neatly, perfectly. After hours of grilling, they finally let me go, warning me not to leave the city. I walked out into the blinding Dubai sun feeling like the walls of the entire country had just closed in around me. When I checked my phone, I had one new message from Sam. No greeting, no explanation, just 3 words. Told you so. That was the moment I stopped being angry and started feeling pure despair. Betrayal hurts. But betrayal when you're trapped in a foreign country with no safety net? That's a different kind of hell. After that interrogation, I knew I had to get out of Dubai. My mind was racing. What if they tried to pin something bigger on me? What if Sam decided to make me disappear from the picture entirely? I packed a small bag, grabbed my passport, and booked the earliest flight out. I remember sitting in the taxi, staring at the city skyline one last time. It was beautiful, almost mocking in its perfection, like it was daring me to leave. But as I got to the airport, my heart sank. The check-in desk refused to let me board. They said there was a travel restriction on my name due to an ongoing investigation. My stomach dropped. I was trapped. I tried calling Sam, but of course, no answer. I tried pleading with the airline staff, showing them the consulate's number, even offering to pay bribes. I was desperate. Nothing worked. Sitting in that terminal, listening to flights take off without me, I finally realized the depth of the trap I'd fallen into. Dubai wasn't just a city of opportunity. It was a cage, and I was the mouse. The betrayal hit me harder than ever. Sam wasn't just a bad friend. He was the architect of my nightmare, and there was no one to turn to. That night, I wandered the city streets, exhausted and defeated, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. The glittering skyscrapers now seemed sinister, like towering reminders of how wrong everything had gone. I knew then that I had to come up with a plan. I couldn't leave immediately, but I also couldn't just sit and wait for them to pin something else on me. Survival became my only focus. After a few sleepless nights, I realized that waiting and hoping wasn't going to save me. I had to take back control, even if it meant walking a tightrope over a pit I couldn't see the bottom of. I started small. I documented everything, every email, every phone call, every suspicious meeting I'd ever seen. I made copies, hid them in my apartment, even emailed some to myself with encrypted passwords. I figured if things got worse, at least I'd have proof. Then I decided to confront the clients directly. I sent careful messages, explaining the situation without admitting fault, trying to plant seeds that I wasn't the fraudster everyone believed me to be. Some didn't respond. Some were furious, but a few seemed to at least listen. Meanwhile, I watched Sam from afar. I wasn't going to confront him directly again, not yet. I needed leverage first. And slowly, piece by piece, I started to build a case. Evidence of forged contracts, manipulated communications, and shady transfers. It was exhausting, terrifying, and completely unlike anything I'd ever done. Every night, I went to sleep wondering if someone was watching, if Sam had eyes everywhere. But something in me changed during those weeks. I stopped feeling like a victim. I stopped feeling powerless. For the first time since landing in Dubai, I felt like I had a shot at reclaiming my life. Little did I know, the real shock was still coming. Just when I thought I had a handle on things, life threw me a curveball. One evening, I received an anonymous email. No name, no signature, just a single attachment, a PDF. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside were screenshots of Sam, my so-called friend, communicating with another foreign employee, plotting exactly how to frame me for even bigger fraud than what I'd already been accused of. But here's the kicker. Buried in the messages was Sam panicking. He didn't realize I'd found a way to access his company account logs. And in his panic, he revealed that he had personal debts and that framing me was the only way he could cover them without losing his lavish lifestyle. I sat there in my apartment, staring at the screen, a mix of rage and disbelief boiling inside me. Everything, the rooftop bar, the briefcase, the warning letter, the travel restriction, it all made sense now. I had been nothing more than a pawn in his desperate, reckless game. And yet, despite knowing the full truth, part of me felt an odd pity. Sam wasn't just a traitor. He was a man drowning in his own greed, willing to drag anyone down with him. That night, I realized something crucial. If I wanted to survive, I couldn't let emotions dictate my actions. I had to be smarter, colder, and more strategic than him. After digesting the truth about Sam, I knew there was only one way forward. I had to outmaneuver him completely. No more half measures. No more hoping someone else would save me. I spent days mapping everything out. I contacted a local lawyer discreetly, someone who understood the UAE legal system but wouldn't alert the company. I showed them the evidence I'd collected, forged contracts, manipulated emails, screenshots of Sam's schemes. The lawyer advised me to be meticulous. One wrong move, and I could still end up in serious trouble. I also set up a fake work routine. I showed up to the office as usual, acted compliant. But secretly, I was consolidating all evidence in a safe place and contacting the few clients who had shown any willingness to listen. Slowly, I built a small network of allies who could vouch for me if the worst happened. And then came the trickiest part, confronting Sam without him realizing it. I sent him a subtle message implying I knew everything. I didn't threaten, didn't yell, just a single line. I'm done being the fall guy. We need to talk. I waited, heart hammering, knowing he could either escalate or back down. That night, I barely slept, but for the first time in months, I felt a tiny spark of hope. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity and proving to myself that I wasn't powerless. The next day, I finally confronted Sam, but not in the aggressive, emotional way I'd imagined. I met him in a neutral cafe, one tucked away from the business district where no one would recognize us. I laid it all out calmly. The forged contracts, the clients I'd spoken to, the evidence of his schemes. I watched his face as I spoke, expecting anger or denial. Instead, I saw something I hadn't anticipated: fear. Real fear. He tried to charm his way out at first, joking, deflecting. But I kept my composure, presenting facts, not accusations. I reminded him that if I went to the authorities, the evidence would be damning, and I made it clear I would go if he pushed me any further. By the end of our meeting, something shifted. Sam realized I wasn't the naive rookie anymore. He promised to stay out of my way, and more importantly, he backed off from trying to drag me into his mess any further. I left that cafe with a mix of relief and exhaustion. The betrayal still stung, but I finally felt a sense of control returning. For the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling like the walls were closing in. It wasn't a perfect ending. Sam was still in Dubai, still benefiting from his schemes, but I had survived. I had reclaimed my agency. And that, in a city built on illusions and glitz, felt like a victory. Looking back, I realized Dubai didn't break me. It revealed what I was capable of when pushed to the edge. The betrayal from Sam cut deeper than anything I've ever faced, but it also taught me lessons I'll carry forever. First, trust cautiously. I came to Dubai thinking that a friend's word was enough to navigate an entirely foreign world. I was wrong. Trust, especially in unfamiliar territory, has to be earned and sometimes tested. Second, protect yourself. Keep records, stay aware, and don't assume anyone has your back. I survived because I documented everything, stayed meticulous, and built allies quietly. Third, anger is natural, but strategy is essential. When I let emotion take over early on, I made mistakes, like confronting Sam blindly. The moments I succeeded were when I stayed calm, rational, and focused on actionable steps. Finally, resilience matters more than luck. Dubai's skyscrapers may glitter, but behind the facade, life can be brutal. I learned that facing fear, betrayal, and the unknown head-on can reveal strengths you didn't know existed. So, to anyone who finds themselves in a situation like mine, trust cautiously, protect yourself relentlessly, and never underestimate your own ability to fight back. You can survive, and even thrive, after betrayal, if you refuse to give up. I still live in Dubai, but now I navigate it with eyes wide open. The city didn't change, I did. And for the first time, that feels like something worth holding on to.